be on people, what would be the net effective amount out of the $1,000, like $1,000 minus whatever?
Yeah, so it would end up, the VAT ends up reducing the impact of the $1,000 slightly, but like the vast majority of Americans would be able to retain like 80 to 90% of the purchasing power, and it would increase the economic purchasing power of the bottom 90% of Americans. It's only if you're like making a ton and like buying yachts and stuff that the VAT would actually be more than like $1,000 a month in essence.
So, Andrew, there's this strong argument which is often made of, say you go to watch a rock show or something, and if one person starts standing on his toes, right, then everyone else starts standing on his toes, and effectively the view which you get is still the same. So it's like universal basic income, like something of standing on the toes, in which the guy now has to put like extra effort to get the same view.
Yeah, you know, it's incredible the impact $1,000 a month would have on the day-to-day circumstances of tens of millions of Americans. And if you've been around the country the way I have, you see the circumstances many Americans are living in, and like it would be really, really impactful. So there are some people that say like, hey, with the suggestion you just made, which is like, hey, give everyone $1,000, it'll just like somehow like get inflated away or balanced out. Like the numbers really just don't show that. And there have been tons of studies where people have gotten $1,000, and again, you see them spend it on themselves, their families, like things just get healthier and better, and there's no reason that would change if you gave money to a lot of different people. It would just mean that more people would be able to take better care of themselves and their families.
So in your book, The War on the Normal People, you said about like why universal basic income is one of the best ways to go about, because one of the things the government does very well is to distribute the money to directly, you know, so that it goes to the people. Can you talk a little bit more on that?
Yeah, so one of the problems is that our politicians pretend we can do things we can't do. You know, like if a politician stands up and says we need to educate Americans on the jobs of the future, it's like, that'd be great, but we can't really do that because anytime we try, we suck at it. So one of my friends, Andy Stern, said something that really stuck with me, and I think you might agree with this. He said the government is terrible at many things, but it is excellent at sending large numbers of checks to large numbers of people. So we have to lean into one of the few things our government could actually do in real life that would help people, you know, and then like get money into your hands, and then you would do great things with it. Just like they did in Alaska, like over this last number of decades, like we can do throughout the country. And I would suggest to you all, Alaska did it with oil money. What is the oil of the 21st century? Data, AI, like, you know, it's like, so we can take what Alaska did with oil and do the same thing with big data and AI.
Is universal basic income is one of the solutions which you're kind of saying about, like, because what is inevitable is the AI automation, right? Is there something which could be solved at the cost level of it instead of going to the effects and then looking at an income?
Yeah, so I mentioned before the manufacturing workers in the Midwest. How many of you all studied economics in college? I did. A few of you. So the economics textbook said that if you were to get rid of lots of jobs, then those workers would get retrained and get new jobs, and then the economy would grow. Those of you who didn't take economics, that's what it says. So then when you dig into what actually happened to the 4 million manufacturing workers who lost their jobs in Michigan, Indiana, Ohio, that didn't really happen. You know, like about half of them left the workforce and never worked again, and then about a half of the ones that left the workforce filed for disability. So when you talk about trying to prevent this stuff from happening, we're already in the middle of it. Like, you know, we got rid of manufacturing workers, we're getting rid of retail workers. By the time it gets to truck drivers, then it's going to be like chaos and madness and violence. So to me, we don't really have that many great choices. But certainly one terrible choice would be to somehow like outlaw self-driving trucks or something like that. Like, because that's really just shooting yourself in the foot, where you're literally just like making yourself less efficient to try and just give people stuff to do. And 4,000 Americans die in accidents with truck drivers right now. So you're literally saying like, I'd rather, you know what I mean? Like there are moral arguments for trying to automate truck driving. And in an alternate reality, we're all celebrating with the truck drivers. It's like great news. You don't have to drive a truck anymore. You know, it's like, because sitting in a truck for 11 hours a day, like, it's really bad for your health. It's like it's really rough on you. But of course, right now the problem is that those truck drivers get paid $46,000 a year, and they're high school graduates, and their opportunity after truck driving is going to be. Does anyone want to say what their next opportunity is going to be? Nobody fucking knows what their next opportunity is, right? You look at it and be like, oh, what is the job for like 3.5 million 50-year-old men like who've been driving a truck for like, no one knows. So like we have to try and, again, move the clock forwards, or else we're gonna wind up in that sort of disastrous situation where politicians are saying you can't do this, you can't do that, because they're trying to protect jobs. We have to try and protect people, not jobs, if you know what I mean.
One other argument, Andrew, is this incentivizing people just for giving like a universal basic income. Is it kind of a very anti-Darwinian, in which people, if they're not able to adapt, those should eventually, that's how the evolution moves forward?
I haven't heard that. Wow, I got cut off. It's Trump. No, I'm back. All right. So. I mean, you guys can. I hope you get this sense. I'm a serial entrepreneur. I love capitalism, and I'm going to convey something that Eric Weinstein, who you guys may have heard of. He's like Peter Thiel's chief economist. He lives here in the Bay Area. Like he and I are friendly.
Oh, he runs the Thiel Capital as well.
Yeah, he runs Thiel Capital.
Director.
So he said two things that really stuck with me and that speak to this question. Number one, he said, we did not realize that capitalism was going to get eaten by its son, technology. And two, he said, we need to become both radically capitalist in some respects and radically socialist in others. It just depends upon the area. So to me, like the sort of Darwinian survival of the fittest stuff, it's like just an oversimplification. Like there's no such thing as like a pure, unfettered system. And to me, it would be ridiculous to suggest that like if someone fails to adapt in this circumstance, because like AI doesn't distinguish. Like if someone was a brilliant radiologist and spent a decade deciphering radiology films and they were world class, they're still going to lose, because AI can see shades of gray that human eyes cannot. It can reference millions of films instead of thousands. And so you can't go to that radiologist and be like, hey, you weren't adaptable. I mean, like that person was like the top of their field and like went through like the absolute best. So it would be ridiculous to say, one of the things I say, it's like, it's not like the truck drivers got dumb and lazy overnight. It's just that their trucks start driving themselves. So it's not a relationship between like character or choices or morality. It's just the fact that technology is getting very, very powerful.
So interesting that, because you say about the radiologist, and that's one of the things which we often cover about, like they pay 500 grand, practice for 10 years, and there's not going to be any jobs, right? So, and the AI automation is going to come after the jobs which are very highly paid. Yeah.